A wonderful day to everyone. The war against hunger is truly mankind's war of liberation. The words of John F. Kennedy. Welcome to today's webinar on food relief. Let nobody go hungry during this pandemic. Myself, Ashok Rathod, third semester student of Naipunnya Institute of Hotel Management, Cherthala. I'd like to invite Mr. John A. Melvin, Assistant Professor at NIS, to take the welcome speech.
So good evening and welcome everyone. One of the best ways to celebrate World Food Day is by giving food to people who really need it. Today we have a prominent personality, Ms. BENITA from United Kingdom, to share her visions on the special day celebrations. Welcome, Ms. BENITA, to this webinar.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Next, I would like to welcome our principal, Father Baiju George Pantembali, to this webinar. Welcome, Father.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I welcome all the participants and faculties to join for this webinar. Once again, welcome each and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin, sir. I request our beloved principal and executive director of Naipunnya School of Management, Cherthala, Reverend Father Baiju George Pandenpalli, to give the presidential address.
Good evening. A warm welcome to everyone, especially to Ms. BENITA. BENITA, warm welcome to Naipunnya School of Management and Naipunnya Institute of Hotel Management. We are very grateful and thankful regarding your presence here today because it's a prestigious moment for our institution to get such an honorable speaker from United Kingdom, and especially BENITA, who is very well known in the field of change maker, a social change maker. And this year we hear about the Nobel Prize of sharing food among people. So this topic and the speaker seems to be very relevant today. And as I go through the profile of our speaker, I am very much impressed that she is a part of social change, and also her renowned work in the area of sharing, especially the sharing of food to the people, and her contributions in this area seems to be very notable. So I'm very happy to welcome you, ma'am, to this program, and we are again thankful for your time spending for Naipunnya School of Management and our hotel management students and institution. So warm welcome, and over to you to share your experiences and views on social change and your other exposure to this field. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. It's absolutely an honor to be here. And I'm really thrilled that I am. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And let's see. Give me a second. Okay. Okay, you should be able to see my presentation. So I'm going to be talking about food sharing, yes, because of course today is World Hunger Day. But World Food Day, but I'm also going to be talking to you about some of the broader issues and the economic system that can actually change the world. Because it's one thing to talk about this idea and this principle of let nobody go hungry, but the question is, what can we do about it? And actually what's really exciting and empowering is the fact that there is much that we can do. So I've already had a wonderful introduction, but I'm BENITA. I'm a speaker, a sharer, a social innovator, a change maker, and I'm the founder of a non-profit organization called The People Who Share. And we help people in need, and we help the planet to be able to share resources and access the things that we need in order to live sustainably and save our planet. And I work with companies and organizations to become change makers and to change lives. Now, it's shocking to know that in 2020, every 3 seconds, someone dies of hunger. Yet the reality is that we have enough food to feed 10 billion people. Yes, 1/3 of our food globally is wasted, and wasted for no good reason. So 1/3 of our food, surplus food, gets wasted. And the whole idea is that we have the resources that we need to end world hunger. And so a sharing economy, which I'm a big proponent of, is a system to live by. It's where we care for people and planet, and we share available resources in any way that we can. Now, in a sharing economy recognizes what I call the tripart value: social value, economic value, and environmental value. And all are costed and counted, because all these types of value exist in the economy, but currently they're not counted. And there are 5 parts to the sharing economy. So first of all, there's what we share, the verticals. There are the subsets, the divisions or parts of the sharing economy. So for example, we might hear about volunteering. That's a part of the sharing economy, or indeed recycling. And then there's the mode, there's how the sharing happens. And that might be through swapping. It might indeed be through recycling, repurposing, upcycling. That's how the sharing happens in practice. And then there's the impact, there's the reason that we share: to create equality, to tackle injustice, to avoid our climate crisis. And then there are the characteristics that underpin the sharing economy, the attributes, the type of economy that we want to build, one that is open and inclusive and diverse and sustainable and caring. But the sharing economy is also a mindset, because by putting sharing and access at the heart of everything that we do, we create and we unlock value for the economy, for people and planet. Now, when the COVID-19 crisis hit back at the beginning of this year, one of the things that we wanted to do at the People Who Share was we wanted to find a way that we could make a contribution, that we could make a valid contribution. And we're campaigners, we're communicators, that's what we do best. And there are incredible organisations on the front line who are delivering food to those who need it most. In the UK, we have an extraordinary organisation, a charity and social enterprise called FareShare. And they work to divert food that would needlessly go to landfill to people that are living in food poverty. Over the last year, they've diverted food for 57.3 million meals. And that's just one social enterprise. So when you start to look at the number of incredible organisations that exist worldwide, across India, there are all sorts of Changemaker organisations that are doing incredible work. And I'm going to take you through some of those stories. But at the People Who Share, what we did was we launched a campaign called COVID-19 Food Relief. And this idea that we should let nobody go hungry, because the reality, as I've illustrated, is that we have enough food to feed everybody who needs to be fed. World hunger is something that need not happen, because when you consider if we divert that 1/3 of perfectly good food that currently is wasted to those living in food poverty, we could feed at least 10 billion people, and we could solve these issues that we have that are so pressing. And so the idea of this Let Nobody Go Hungry campaign is to raise the profile of that, to raise the profile and showcase some of these extraordinary organisations. And indeed, on our website, we have a list of some of the organisations, currently ones that are in the UK, who are doing exactly that, who are finding ways to feed those who need to access food, and who are working on this issue of food waste that is so very, very pertinent. Because what we're doing by looking at these issues of food waste and food poverty, and we're seeing them as two sides of the same coin, is that we're starting to understand that we can build this sharing economy in a system that is sustainable. Because whilst we're tackling food waste, we're also tackling this whole issue of our climate crisis, whilst at the same time, we're addressing poverty and hunger. And so that's what we've done. It's a communications campaign to raise the issues, to raise awareness about the fact that we can solve this very pressing problem. What we need to be doing is providing access to resources, but we also need to be showcasing the incredible work of organisations worldwide who are doing exactly that. You know, Desmond Tutu said, a time of crisis is not just a time of anxiety and worry. It gives a chance, an opportunity to choose well or to choose badly. And this crisis has pointed exactly to that. We have this opportunity now to rebuild and reimagine society. We have an opportunity to build a much more sustainable, caring, sharing economy. And what we've seen during this coronavirus crisis is we've seen the largest volunteer effort since the Second World War. In the UK, we had 750,000 people signed up to volunteer for our National Health Service. We've seen the world over, there's a kindness pandemic from Australia to Austria. We've seen food sharing in South Korea, in Brazil, and in India. We've seen partnerships and collaborations across sectors. And we've seen sharing economy businesses supporting those who need it most. I've seen 3 types of sharing during this crisis. First of all, this shared action, the volunteering, the social action. People saying that I am going to do something to make a difference. I care about my neighbours and I want to do something. I want to take some kind of action. Then there's this shared understanding. We've seen a value shift, a reevaluation of our lifestyle. There's been a sense of gratitude. Whilst people have been locked down in their homes, they've had an opportunity to reflect, to reconsider, to re-examine their lives, to re-examine a life of hyperconsumption that has been wrecking the planet. Those in business have had to think about how they can build back sustainably and what contribution their businesses can bring to the world. Because those businesses that are reconsidering and are reimagining their business models are those that are going to survive in the future. And finally, we've seen this shared responsibility. People have understood that in order to save lives, we are in this together. Social distancing, sanitization, and so on, wearing face masks, all of these things, finding ways to work remotely and connect remotely. This is about a shared responsibility. 4 years ago, I set out on a journey to create a book called Generation Share. And Generation Share is an inspiring book that catalogues over 200 stories of changemakers from around the world. And I was fortunate enough to come to India on 2 occasions. First of all, to come to India to meet some of the incredible changemakers. We have, you'll see in the, well, it's the top left of my screen, we have Ashok, and Ashok has set up, Ashok Rathod, he has set up an organization called the Oscar Foundation. And what they do is they work with slum-based youth to give them a chance and opportunity. They entice them into education through football. Football is the way that they engage and encourage young people to be able to have a future. So they come and they follow an education program, and this is giving them an opportunity to have a future and completely transform their lives. We also have Arti Naik, who set up the Saki School for Girls Education in Mumbai. And through her project, she is enabling girls to have a future, to get educated, to leave a life of poverty, and to be completely transformed through education. During this pandemic, both Arti and Ashok have been feeding slum-based children and their families through donations and food drives. They have been carrying out incredible initiatives to ensure that not only are these young people able to continue their education safely, but that their families are fed. This is Akshay Bhatia, who has set up a platform called Multiply, which is a goods sharing platform, enabling people to access the goods that they need. And this whole idea that we don't necessarily need to own, what we need to do is to access. And his business is about enabling people to access things they may be unable to afford to own, but they're able to access them. There was one story about a young person who was able to borrow a calculator for a maths exam that was giving them an opportunity to gain a qualification that could change their life. And they were able to do that through his platform. They didn't have the funds to buy a calculator, but they were able to borrow one through the platform. And so we have all kinds of incredible entrepreneurs in India and around the world, and I call them change makers. These are 2 women in Brighton, where I live, And they've set up a supermarket, a sustainable supermarket, a community-based supermarket. They call themselves the Supermarket Rebels. And their supermarket, their business is called HISBE, which stands for How It Should Be. They started with a blank page and they said, what should the food industry look like? If you walk into a supermarket, what goods should you be able to access? They wanted something that was affordable, that was healthy, that was fairly paid, fairly traded, and that was sustainable. And they wanted to tackle food waste. Their products are plastic free. People are able to come in and bring containers and refill them. But also they're working with suppliers who don't usually get the opportunity to sell their goods in supermarkets. Suppliers that are fairly paid. The average supermarket in the UK, for every £1 that is spent, only 9 pence goes to those suppliers. When you walk into HISBE, you know that out of every £1 spent, 68%, 68 pence is paid to those suppliers. The money is being ploughed back into the local community to create a viable local economy and a business that is sustainable and has an impact, a positive impact on the community. A food business that enables people to eat well, eat affordably, and minimize food waste. I mentioned previously Ashok Rathod and the work that he's been doing with the Oscar Foundation. And here are some of the young people that he's supported. A really incredible journey. Here are some images of the food drive that he's been doing, feeding 8,000 families during this pressing time, mostly in southern Mumbai. This is another entrepreneur from the UK. And Alex Stephanie has set up a social business called BEAM, which stands for Be Amazing. And what he does with BEAM, it's a crowdfunding platform that raises funds to offer homeless people training and employment. And the team at BEAM, they're able to identify homeless people that could benefit from this project. And they raise the funds through the platform where people are able to collectively make donations on a monthly basis. And homeless people are able to have that funding, and that funding itself goes directly to pay for training programs for employment. And so they come through this program with steady and regular employment, completely transforming their lives. So I want to ask this question, what is a Changemaker company? Because in order to change the world, we need to change the narrative. We need to start telling different stories. And as individuals, as communities, and as businesses, we have an opportunity to make a difference. Well, a Changemaker company is a sustainable business that creates value for people and planet, and that cares about issues such as poverty and world hunger, and through their business and their organization wants to do something to address those very pressing issues. So what do Changemakers have in common? Well, Changemakers are sharers. So how does your company share? How do you build your collaborative advantage? Because as organizations, one of the most important skills for the future is this ability to partner and collaborate. And we've seen through the crisis, through the pandemic, that organizations are having to form partnerships in order to survive. Partnership working is the future working. Changemakers are also brave. They reinvent the rules. When Aarti Naik set out from her slum home in Mulund in Mumbai to set up the Saki School for Girls Education, she herself could not speak English and she could barely speak Hindi. She spoke Marathi. And so she had to teach herself how to be a teacher. She had to educate herself so she could go on to educate others. That took incredible bravery. And what she's achieved has been extraordinary. Changemakers are also adaptable because your company can only change lives if you're willing to change. During this crisis, we've seen that those companies who are not willing to adapt simply do not survive. We're living in a fast-changing world with all kinds of pressing problems and crises, climate crises, pandemics. And as businesses and organizations, we need to adapt in order to survive. Changemakers also put love at the heart, love and care for people and planet, and consider the impact of everything that they do. It's no longer the case that any industry or any sector is able to simply consider financial value. They need to consider how they're also going to be able to create environmental and social value. And by putting love at the heart of what they're doing, love and care for people and planet, they're able to transform not only their businesses, but the communities that they serve and the world at large. Changemakers are also positive. They find solutions and they showcase success. And positivity is an important characteristic of the sharing economy because it's the disease of cynicism that has been destroying our world. And by showcasing positive stories, as I found through my journey with Generation Share, it inspires more people to be positive, to create these change-making initiatives, to bring transformation for people and planet, to help end these pressing issues like hunger and poverty. Changemakers are also future conscious. And this is a final characteristic, but obviously an all-important one. They're thinking about the long term, not about short term or a quick fix, but they're considering the long-term impact of everything that they do. They see the bigger picture. They're systemic. Because to weather uncertainty in a world with challenges like COVID-19, companies and organizations need to become change makers. So how do you become a change maker company? Well, I always say start with 3 key questions. What does your business or your organization or your community or you as an individual, what are you currently doing that is needed in a time of crisis? And then using your existing capability, what could you do that is needed in a time of crisis? And finally, what do you need to do in order to make that happen? What aspect of your core business could you deliver online? We've seen a boom in virtual working. When people have had no choice but to work from home, to work remotely, they have found so many ways of collaborating with others online, ways in which people are coming together virtually and connecting, though they are many, many, many miles and kilometers apart. Because your future depends on becoming change makers. How well can you share, be brave, adaptable, positive, show love for people and planet, and consider the future impact of everything that you do? My organisation, The People Who Share, is best known for a global campaign called Global Sharing Week, and it takes place in the first week of June every year. And ordinarily, we have hundreds of events happening around the world where people are coming together in communities to share everything from food to clothing to shelter to skills. And it's an extraordinary explosion of sharing that happens around the world, with ordinarily over 500 physical events occurring and a real pandemic of kindness. This year has been a very different Global Sharing Week. And instead, what we decided to do was to create a global map of impact where organizations that were sharing food, for example, or were tackling poverty, or were sharing resources in some kind of way, could register their organization of impact on our World Impact Map. And so far we have about 220 organizations on the map worldwide who have registered their initiatives. This didn't just happen during the Global Sharing Week, but it's something that's a year-round resource for people to access and find all kinds of resources that they need. When you consider that 1.3 billion people, 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted every single year, a third globally. When you start to consider the amount of food waste, you consider that if we shared food, nobody would go hungry. Because by sharing, we create a sustainable future. This image for all to share is an organization called Incredible Edible. And what they do is they grow free food in public spaces. They find ways of growing in potholes, in cracks in the road, in tiny bits of land that people have discarded and not looked after for many, many years. And through volunteering, they transform and they plant food and provide vegetables and fruit for people to freely access and share. So on World Food Day, let's pledge to become change makers. Let's share our resources and let nobody go hungry. Thank you so much for sharing, and I'd be really happy to take any questions that you may have.
Ma'am, as an individual, hello.
Hello there.
As an individual, what can I start doing from my home itself to be the change maker?
So it's a really good question. And I always say that when you get up on a morning, say to yourself, ask yourself a very simple question. What can I share today? And that might be as simple as sharing a smile with a neighbor. It might be something that you could do to help a friend. It might be that you have something surplus that you can share with somebody else. It might be a skill that you have that somebody might just need help with something. But ask yourself a simple question, because it does start with us. It starts with us saying, what can I do? And everybody can do this. The thing about sharing is to share is to be human. Everybody can do this. It's completely accessible. So start with something simple and a question, what can I share?
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions or thoughts, ideas? I'd love to hear them. I'll say that one of the things that was really inspiring about coming to India, and I mentioned that I made 2 trips to India, one in the first instance to meet some of the change makers, and how I came to be in India and how I came to meet Arti Naik, I should tell you, is that Arti Naik contacted me via LinkedIn, and she sent me a message via LinkedIn, and she had heard that I was looking for change makers and she'd heard about Generation Share, and she said, I am Generation Share. Will you come to India and tell my story? And the fact that someone who lived thousands of miles away from where I live on the south coast of the UK had heard about Generation Share and believed that through telling it through a book showcasing positive stories that could make a difference, that made a huge impact and a huge difference to me. And that's how I came to be in India. And Sophie Scheinwald and I, Sophie is the photographer of the book, and how we came to India together, we crowdfunded the funds to travel to the different countries to meet the different change makers. But it's thanks to Arti Naik. And this book is made from 100% waste materials. And this is a copy of the book. It's made from 100% waste materials, and every single copy feeds and educates a girl in the slums in Mumbai. So there is a donation that goes to Arti Naik's school. And also every single copy sold also plants a tree through the Eden Reforestation Project. So the book in and of itself is creating impact, is creating change. And we worked with Policy Press, who are publishers of social change. And they were able to enable us to make this fairly. Everybody involved has been fairly paid. It uses organic inks. And it contains over 200 stories, inspiring stories of change makers from around the world who come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all cultures, all religions, people who are living in poverty, others who have wealth and more status. And what we find is people are sharing regardless of gender, regardless of disability. To share is to be human. And that's really the finding of the book, that everybody can make a contribution. Everybody has gifts and talents, and our planetary resources may be finite, but our potential to share is unlimited. And if we can unleash that, there's really no end to what we can achieve. Any other questions or thoughts?
Ma'am, do you have anyone in the southern India, Kerala, who's working with you towards this share?
Well, interestingly, the second time that I came back to India, I came with my father because it was his 80th birthday, and it's his birthday today. And so a year ago, it was actually in November, we came to India for 2 reasons. One was a big adventure. My father wants to come to India. He'd wanted to come all of his life. And for his 80th birthday, he wanted an adventure and he wanted to come to India. And so him and I came, first of all, to Mumbai, where we launched the book. And we had a launch event there, and Arti Naik came with some of the slum-based girls, and whose lives are being transformed through the sales of the book. It was an extraordinary experience. And then my father and I, we flew to Kerala, and we spent about 8 days in Kerala. We could have spent so much more time, we would have loved to, but that's the time that we had, or maybe 9 days we had. And it was really a magical trip. And on that trip, we were lucky enough to meet Srijith. And since then, Sri and I have been in contact, communication. He has been teaching us yoga and meditation online with my father up in Leeds. And I connect through Srijith. I have been connected to quite a few sharers in Kerala, but I would love to meet more. And, you know, the truth is that there are so many change makers. You know, people ask me, how did you decide who was going to be in the book? And it was a difficult decision because, you know, for everybody in the book, there were many, many thousands more people that could have been interviewed and that could have been featured in the book. And on my travels through Kerala, I met some extraordinary people who are tackling all kinds of issues, including food sharing. You know, we stayed in an eco hotel where, you know, people are making a contribution, where the staff all share tips, everything is shared. And whether you are the CEO, whether you are the owner, or whether you are cleaning the hotel, at whatever level, everybody is treated as an equal. And, you know, it was really exciting to see some of those projects firsthand and really experience them. And we were definitely on the receiving end of a tremendous amount of kindness and hospitality. And, you know, I recognize through all of this that the travel sector has taken a big hit during COVID-19. But I do think there are many opportunities in travel and tourism. I think that really the focus is going to be on local travel and people discovering what they have on their doorstep. You know, certainly here in the UK, people have been doing, you know, staycations, and they've been discovering, you know, what's in their locality. And I think that's really powerful, that we have this opportunity to really discover what we have. Because in so many cases, you know, what we need is right there in front of us. It's not necessarily had the time to recognize it. And so from a travel and tourism point of view, I think the idea that experiences are going to be offered in a different way and that people will travel in a different way, but also considering that businesses and organizations in the travel industry really need to consider how are they making a contribution, a positive contribution to people and planet. This can no longer be about economic contribution purely. It needs to be about economic, environmental, and social. And where companies and organizations are able to reimagine and become these change maker businesses, they will survive in the future, because people want authentic experiences. They want to know where their food comes from. They don't want their drinks to be served in plastic bottles. They don't want to be traveling in a way that is harmful to the planet. You know, this crisis has highlighted many fault lines in our economy, and we now have this opportunity to rebuild in a better and more sustainable way.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? I'll just tell you a little bit more. I'm just going to share my screen again and just tell you a little bit more about the book. Okay, if that's allowing me to do that.
Is the book available on Amazon or Flipkart in India?
Yes. So Generation Share is available. It's available online from all good bookstores. It's available on Amazon, and it is distributed in India. So we'll be able to find it also locally in some bookstores, but it is available. It is available online. And we, you know, I say we had a fantastic launch in India, and we've had a lot of interest in the book. Certainly, you know, in the country, and we do feature quite a few of the change makers. We also looked at some of the cultural sharing that happens, and how, you know, food sharing in India and some of the different initiatives. You know, we went to a Gurdwara, And we looked at how, in the Sikh community, the Gurdwara exists and people are able to go to the temple and receive a meal and be fed. And in fact, Sophie and I, as part of this journey, we had a meal in the Gurdwara, and we met some of the people who were volunteering there. And they talked to us about, how everybody is treated equally, everybody is given the same food and treated in an equal way. And this was a really positive experience, I think you have some incredible examples of sharing in India. Gandhi is mentioned in my book, one of the original sharers, a really inspirational sharer. And, I think that India is a really phenomenal country in terms of how it is starting to power a new economy and being an economy that is really on the rise, and there is so much potential. And given that the average age, I believe, in India is 26, and all of the technological advance and the innovation in technology that's happening in India, there's so much potential. And I think particularly for those who are setting up and starting businesses, new businesses, and are looking at how they can reimagine sectors and industries, I think there's a fantastic, wealth of knowledge and information. One of the organizations that we worked with in India are called Unlimited India. And I don't know if any of you have come across them, but they are a foundation for social entrepreneurs, and they provide support for social entrepreneurs. Unlimited India, they're called UNLTD India. And they really are a fantastic organization. And they were also able to connect me to some of the phenomenal change makers that feature in the book. There's also a whole chapter which is looking at geography, and there are 3 case studies, and one of them is on India. So there's quite a lot of information in the book about social entrepreneurship in the country, and how in an emerging economy we're starting to see some really exciting social change making innovation. Any other questions or thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to ask me? Anything else? Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm thrilled to have met you all, and I hope that today has been useful. I hope there's something that you can take away from that. If anyone would like to contact me, you can contact me, BENITA at thepeoplewhoshare.com, or I'm on Twitter at BENITA MATOFSKA, and I'm really happy to take any further questions that you might have, that you may think about afterwards. And I just really urge you to think about some of these things. Please do spread the word about Generation Share, the book. It is a non-profit initiative with non-profit publishers. It is all about creating ripples of positive social change and change making, and inspiring more people to get out there. And if there's anything that I can say to you, it's this: it's take that opportunity to get out there and do something that is going to make a difference. It's all about creating what is the value that you can bring to people and planet. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with me. And I'm really thrilled to be here for World Food Day, and I hope this has been useful and insightful and inspiring for you. But thank you for sharing with me.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really inspirational and informative. I believe everyone will try to implement it in their lives in ways possible. Now, I invite Mr. Suresh Matthews, Assistant Professor, Naipunnya Institute of Hotel Management, to convey our gratitude for the session.
Thank you, Abhishek. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Ms. BENITA for the inspiring words. I believe your words have inspired me to be a change maker through sharing. And I have decided that I will be starting my each day with a quick question: what can I share today? Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful session.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would like to thank our beloved principal to make this webinar as successful and allowing us to conduct this webinar. And I would like to thank our HOD, Hari Krishnan, for all his support and all the participants who've been patiently waiting to hear these inspiring words. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar.
Thank you, Suresh sir.